So it finishes Manchester United 2, Tottenham Hotspur 2, and I'm not going to lie, the reaction after the game, if you didn't watch the game, you would have thought that Manchester United lost 3-0. Manchester United have gone undefeated in 5, and yes, it is disappointing that Manchester United were up until the 82nd minute when Spurs tied it. But for Manchester United, the players to show the resolve that they did to get back into the game once they conceded the 90th minute goal to make it 2-1 to Spurs, down to 10 men away from home. For United to go and score late into extra time from a Matthias de Ligt header, I think it shows a lot of character from this group of players. And I think even after the game kicked off again when it was 2-2, in my opinion, what I saw was Manchester United were looking to try and go get a third. Didn't happen. The game ends 2-2, which in the grand scheme of things is, you could argue, a fair result. But we're going to talk about the good and we are going to talk about the bad from this game. So as always, make sure to grab your tea, grab your coffee, grab your espresso, and let's get into the video. So this is how the two teams lined up. Lamens has very much made the number one position at Manchester United his own. He starts in goal. The back three was Luke Shaw, Harry Maguire, and Matthias de Ligt. The two wingbacks, I was actually surprised to see Mazraoui and Patrick Dorgu. I didn't think that they had the best of game, the pair of them, to be completely honest with you. The midfield, we all know that Ruben loves his Bruno Casemiro midfield. And then he went with the front three of Ahmad off the right, Mbumo off the left, and Mateus Cunha in the 9. Now, in my opinion, if we're going to play this exact set of players, I would have liked to have seen Mbumo in the 9 and Cunha in the left 10. I think that a lot of times when Mbumo was receiving the ball in this area with his back facing his own goal, it's not always the best angles for him to receive, whereas I think Mateus Cunha does his best work when he's drifting into these pockets here, receiving the ball, facing defenders up, and running at them. But nevertheless, that is the setup in which Ruben Amorim decided to opt with against Spurs. Thomas Frank decided to go with the typical 4-2-3-1, so he went with Vicario in goal. He went with Pedro Porro, Romero, Van de Ven, and Jet Spence as the back four. He went with João Paulinho and Sarr in midfield. A three of Brennan Johnson, Xavi Simons, Richarlison, and then in the 9 he went with Kolo Muani. Now let's get into what we saw from this game. And I want to talk a little bit first about Manchester United's first goal, and I want to start from the very beginning of how United progressed up the pitch in this goal and why I think adding Lisandro Martinez back into the side will be so important. Although I have to be completely honest, I actually think Luke Shaw has been quite good this season. So the ball's out wide and we know how much Ruben Amorim loves to progress with his wide center halves being very direct, playing balls either over the top and creating overloads when the second ball or fizzing those balls into midfield for the attacking players to create the attacks. And Bruno Fernandes, as he does a really good job here of finding some quiet space on the pitch, and he's made himself available wide open to receive in a little bit of space and get United up the pitch as quickly as possible. Mateus Cunha makes a really good run here. Bruno finds him in the pocket. It ends up getting crossed in. Mbumo misses the header, but United keep possession. The ball gets out wide, and this is just a really good job of Manchester United getting bodies in the box, something that I have spoken about before, in which I don't think they've done a good enough job this season of getting numbers in the box when they're in the final third. But here you can see Mazraoui makes the overlap, so he keeps Jet Spence honest. He has to be wary of the fact that Ahmed might play that slip ball into Mazraoui. And Ahmad does a really good job of picking out a pass. And here you can see it's a 3v2. Romero and Van de Ven get kind of sucked in to ball side, and you have Mbumo, Bruno, and Patrick Dorgu against, I believe that's Pedro Porro, tight to Mbumo, and Brennan Johnson just trailing in behind. Obviously, the ball gets crossed in, and it's a great finish from our player of the season, in my opinion, no doubt. Bryan Mbumo makes it 1-0 to Manchester United, and I have to say, it wasn't the best display of football from either team in this game. But in my opinion, this was a deserved lead for Manchester United, and they did a really good job of working this attack, and United are 1-0 to the good. Now, what's frustrating for me isn't so much the fact that United drew this game, but it's more so the fact that we had a lot of missed opportunities. And again, I see opinions, and everyone's entitled to their own about the game and how Manchester United don't create any opportunities. But I mean, if you just go back and rewatch the game, I think you'll clearly see that that's not the case. Now, I think a lot of us watch our favorite football club from an emotional standpoint, and that's fine. And I know opinions right after a game, especially in a game where you don't win, especially in a game where you don't win when you're up 1-0 in the 82nd, 83rd minute. I understand the emotions are running pretty high, especially given the fact that now it's the international break and we kind of have to sit with this result for the next couple of weeks. But United did have chances in this game to score. Chance number one. Again, he's been our best player this season, no doubt. And Bruno Fernandes plays a slip ball here into Mbumo. And I mean, Mbumo has a pretty decent amount of net to aim at here. And Vicario makes a good save. But, this is a chance where 9 times out of 10 in a moment like this, we saw what happened at Anfield when he got into a position like this. He puts the ball in the back of the net, and I'm expecting Bumo to put this ball in the net, no questions asked, even against Brighton when he made it 4-2. Again, in a pretty similar situation in the box. I'm just expecting him to find a way to beat Vicario. In this specific instance, he doesn't. And that's a really big chance for a really good player to score a goal for Manchester United, and it doesn't happen. Another one here, and this is where I kind of want to see the bravery. So everyone's complaining about how Bruno Fernandes is playing deeper. Bruno Fernandes, plays better when he's attacking the opposition 18. He's making those late runs into the box. But the thing with Bruno, he's such an intelligent player. He's going to create those spaces for himself anyways. And here he makes a run. He's the last man. He's in behind. This is a moment where you just want Patrick Dorgu to play that slip ball in behind. Bruno Fernandes has a ton of space to run into. If Dorgu can just get this ball into Bruno, it's not a huge chance from this specific moment, but if this is a good ball from Patrick Dorgu into Bruno, and it actually happens in the second half, and we'll take a look at it as well, it's an opportunity. And again, in my opinion, in a specific moment like this, you need your wing backs to be able to play that ball in behind. And in my opinion, this is another missed opportunity. Now, this is the Mateus Cunha chance in the first half, and I do a lot of praise for Manchester United's off-the-ball shape and the work that they do off the ball, and we're going to get into that, but this is actually a moment in which I don't think that they pressed well at all. The ball gets out wide here to Van de Ven, and you can see it's almost a 5-4-1, and that's what United were defending in a mid-block. It was Mbumo, Bruno, Casemiro, Ahmad as the 4, the back 5, and then Cunha as the 9. But look how much space is here from Bruno to Luke Shaw. And then look at Palhinha and look at Xavi Simons and look at Jet Spence. This is just really not a good situation to be in, because obviously if they can find a way to work this well, then there's a ton of space for Xavi Simons to pick up the ball here, and he's their biggest creator in the team, and you don't want a player like him to be able to, pick up the ball, face up your defense and run at them. But to United's credit, Mazraoui does a really good job of stepping in on Jet Spence and creating a turnover. This could have probably been a really bad situation had this ball got to Xavi Simons, because you can see there's nobody really here closing him down. But Mazraoui does a really good job of stepping to the fullback, doing what he's supposed to do as a wingback, wins possession back for United, and now Manchester United are on the transition, and Mateus Cunha is in a 1v1 with Cuti Romero. And again, in my opinion, I think Ahmad doesn't make the right run. He kind of gets in Mateus Cunha's way. And for a player of Mateus Cunha's quality, in a situation like this, again, you see Mbumo making the run to the back post. This is another big opportunity for Manchester United that they squandered, if we're being completely honest. This is another moment. It's a great ball from Ahmad. He plays a peach of a pass over the top to Bruno. And again, a player of Bruno's quality should be doing better with this. I think Palhinha does a really good job of closing him down and, creating havoc for Bruno to not have the time to bring it down and have a shot. But I think the player of Bruno's quality, we've seen him score goals like this before. I think it's disappointing that he doesn't at least work Vicario in this specific instance. And I gotta be honest, I've been a big fan of Benjamin Sesko's game for Manchester United so far this season, but he was quite disappointing in my opinion when he came on. Obviously, very unfortunate, the knee injury that he picked up. He had to go off. United had to play the rest of the game with 10 men. I hope, it's nothing serious, but only time will tell with that. But I think Sesko had one really big opportunity, this one not so much, but two opportunities to really make a big impact in the game, and neither of them were really taken. So in this one, again, Mason Mount plays a beautiful slip ball in behind. I thought Mason Mount was outstanding when he came on the pitch, absolutely outstanding. And Benjamin Sesko's in here, and he faces up Cuti Romero, and Romero just kind of easily sticks out his left foot and wins possession back. And in a situation like this, in all honesty, you want your striker to create a little bit of separation from his defender and get a shot off. And we know that Sesko can do it. Again, in my video that I made of Sesko before he joined United, we saw him be able to create a little bit of separation and hit the ball, and he strikes the ball really well. In this specific instance, he doesn't get a shot off, and in my opinion, that's really, really frustrating in such a close game. And this is the biggest chance of the lot. And again, Mason Mount does a beautiful job of disguising. It looks like he's going to play it into Mbumo there. And then he plays the crossbody slip pass into Sesko. And Sesko just kind of, takes too many touches and he lets Van de Ven get it back in behind. Makes a really good tackle. Fair play to Van de Ven. But Sesko, a confident Sesko, should let this ball roll across his body and just hit it on his left foot. Instead, he tries to cut back on his right foot and, it doesn't end up in anything. And, these are big moments in the game. This was right after Spurs equalized and it makes all the difference. So, for all those people who are saying that Manchester United didn't create chances, well, I very much beg to differ based on what I just showed here. Now, I want to talk about Manchester United off the ball because I think they did a really good job of nullifying Spurs, especially nullifying their most creative player in Xavi Simons. And oftentimes Spurs were looking to go long and trying to essentially do what United do and win those second balls, win the duels, because they didn't really have any success building through the middle. And this was a big reason why. I think in the beginning of the season and last season, we saw a lot of disconnection between the back five and the midfield two. But I think, you can tell it's so obvious that United have worked on this a lot. Because if I showed you this specific still and you didn't watch the game, you would probably think this was a 4-3-3, especially if you didn't know the personnel on the pitch. Because look where Luke Shaw is. Luke Shaw is connected to the midfield. He makes the midfield three of Luke Shaw, Bruno Fernandes, and Casemiro. And this was his job. As soon as he saw Xavi Simons is in a pocket of space, he's responsible for closing him down. Obviously, Casemiro wants to be able to get tight here to, I believe that's Sarr if he gets on the ball. But this is what Ruben Amorim wants in a nutshell. He wants his wide center halves to be confident and able to step into midfield when needed. And I think that the wide center halves especially did a really good job of closing those angles and not allowing Spurs to fizz those passes in through midfield, forcing them to go long. And I think we've seen time and time again how confident Manchester United are dealing with those long balls. Again, it's a man-to-man, so you have Mbumo ready to play out here if Porro gets on the ball. Bruno's ready to jump to Palhinha. Cunha shadowing Romero. Ahmad ready to jump to Van de Ven. Casemiro on Sarr, and you can't see him here, but Mazraoui, the wingback, ready to jump to Jet Spence, and Luke Shaw, again, aggressive, proactive, ready to jump to Xavi if he gets on the ball in this pocket of space, because, of course, he does a really good job of occupying these areas here, getting behind the midfield and picking up the ball, and I think that United, Shaw and Matthijs de Ligt, more so because they were the wide center halves, did a really good job of making sure that that wasn't a thing. And again here, when they did try to, split the midfield, you can see here United in their 5-4-1 block in the mid block. De Ligt is ready, very proactive, very aggressive, steps out. And I think De Ligt's been brilliant this season so far, by the way. Arguably our player of the season, if not for Mbumo, but he does a really good job to step out here. He engages with Richarlison, makes it very difficult for him to receive. And this was just a common theme with United, and it's been a common theme with the wide center halves, and it's been a breath of fresh air because I think last season the triggers, the jumps were really late, and that's why we seemed so easy to play through. But I think the guys are really getting a hang of when to jump and when to sit. Especially in those mid to deep blocks, which is really good to see. Now, this is just going to be a couple of stills, and maybe it's not the most fair, but I think we saw how important Casemiro was once again when he comes off. It almost seems as if as soon as Casemiro comes off, Manchester United lose all control of the game. The unfortunate thing is, obviously, Casemiro is, not the youngest anymore. He's played a lot of football in his career. And sometimes as games progress, he can seem to get a little bit leggy. He seems to get a little bit tired. But the situation really is that Ugarte is his, replacement, if you will. He's the one that plays that anchor role that Casemiro plays. And this is just a perfect example of Casemiro's reading of the game compared to his peers. And when you see it here, this is just Ugarte getting way too excited to kind of jump and eliminate the passing lane. The reality is he needs to know that he can't jump in here so aggressively, because look at the pocket of space, again, that is disconnected the midfield to the defense. They are not connected whatsoever. There is too much space. There's too much of a gap for Ugarte to be so aggressive here. He has to realize that there's a massive pocket of space in behind, and he has to sit off. He has to be comfortable with sitting off, and only if this ball gets played in here, then can he jump. He jumps too early, and Spurs play a little slip ball in behind. I believe that's Bentancur plays a slip ball in behind to Sarr, and look at all the space. Richarlison has the pinned. You have a 1v1 here. You have a 1v1 here. It's not a good situation to be in. Nothing comes from it, but this just shows the importance of a Casemiro, and Manchester United are going to have a really big job this summer trying to find a replacement for Casemiro in midfield. And lastly, I want to speak about Spurs tying goal, because this is what frustrated me the absolute most from this game. And it's unacceptable on all fronts. So you can see Destiny Udogi's here in a 1v1 versus Ahmad. And I thought for the most part, aside from the Romero chance where Lemens made a great save, I thought for the most part, United's wide players did a really good job of making sure that Spurs didn't get easy crosses into the box. Here, Ahmad doesn't get a cross, and, that's fine. Udogi whips in a really good ball, a low, hard cross into Matthijs Tel, so it's a good cross, to be fair to him. But one of Ugarte or Yoro need to cut this out. There's no way that in this situation here, this ball should be able to be fizzed all the way across, and Matthijs Tel should be able to take a touch, back to goal on De Ligt, and then just hit it, and it goes in. And all of a sudden, it's a tie game, and the stadium, which was super flat, all of a sudden has a ton of life, and we know what happened. They went and scored a second. Luckily for us, De Ligt gets a late goal at the end of the game. But these moments in a game where you've been the better team, in a game where you've had the chances, you need to see out the next 10 minutes. To fall asleep here where you have 1, 2, 3, and then, this ball just comes in and nobody out of the 3 players here defends it. It's really frustrating, in my opinion, and I just was very upset when I saw that goal go in. But it's 5 games undefeated. I think if anybody would have asked you, would you have taken 11 points out of a possible 15, especially when you looked at the fixture list, I think you would have said yes. I think there are a lot of good things to build on, and I think there are still a lot of things that United need to work on if they are going to have a real push for European football this season. I think that has to be the goal, and I don't think that that's changed after these run of games. I think the goal from the beginning of the season must have been Champions League, and I think it has to continue to be Champions League. And United are within touching distance. They have a relatively favorable run of fixtures after the international break, although the Premier League this season has shown that anybody can beat anybody on any given day. But I think there are a lot of positives to take, and I'm not going to be the guy that's going to be all negative and again come on here and scream saying, I expected 15 out of 15 points and we should be beating everybody, because I just think you have to be realistic. And the reality is United did some really good things over these past 5 games, and they did some not so good things in these past 5 games. I know people don't want to hear it, but I do think it's a process, and I think a lot of signs show that United are headed in the right direction, in my opinion. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. In your opinion, do you think that out of the last 5 games, 11 points is a good number? Do you think it's not good enough? And let me know what you thought about the Spurs game in general. We now head into the international break, and then United have Everton once the international break has concluded. That is it for this one. I appreciate everybody who's been watching. I will chat to y'all again very soon. Until next time, peace.